I saw a comment, and I think it's been deleted, but it basically said something to the effect of, um, "Are all coping techniques maladaptive?" or something like that. Um, I think it was a completely legit query, and thing to bring up because, first of all, I've definitely been through sort of phases where I pushed back against the people who said that, I have a personality disorder and they are normal and there's something wrong with me. And I'm like, well, this is my experience, and who's to say that, your experience, which is different from mine, is normal and should be the standard, and then mine there's something wrong with, because come on, people are people. Of course, the answer to that is, well, I'm the one that has these limitations and these other people don't feel it, so I guess their way is right and my way is wrong. Even though it's not really wrong, it's just the way I am. And I think that when you hit that point where you're sort of pushing back, I think it's actually a very good place to be in, because you are accepting yourself as, this is legit. It might not be perfect. It might not be, um, the ideal, but it's you and you accept it. I think that's kind of a great place to be. It's a phase everybody, I hope everybody that gets avoidant personality disorder diagnosis gets to that point where they can sort of say, this is me, it's not perfect, but it's me. And not try to force yourself to be something else, because that doesn't work. But back to the question, although I don't remember if it was really a question or if it was just a comment. Anyway, that about coping techniques and are they all maladaptive or something like that. Because, well, two-prong. All coping techniques can become maladaptive, all of them. They're not automatically maladaptive, and I think that basically everybody on the planet has used at one point or another probably all of the coping techniques that can become maladaptive. Well, maybe not all of them. Like, I personally have never done hard drugs. That is a coping technique. So not all of them, but at least some of them most people have done at one point or another. So the question is then, when does it become maladaptive? And this, I think, depends on the person. And that there isn't a definite absolute standard of this is maladaptive and this is not. And because for some person out there, they could have do a behavior that for them is just normal, and for another person trying to do that would, really be very bad for them at all. I mean, back to the example I just used, you've got people that could, on a regular basis, drink, 4-6 drinks a day and not be an alcoholic. It is their de-stressing, and they do it every day, and they might have an emotional tie to it, but they don't have a physical tie. And then there are other people that can drink very little, and they have predisposition toward alcoholism, and they're like instantly hooked. And you've got some people who, because of their body type, could drink 4, 5, 6 drinks a night and it not affect them very much. And some people who have different body type, where they would have alcohol poisoning if they drank that much. So it's different for each person. And I also think that there's a difference in cultures. Sorry about the cat. I don't know if the door is shut. Anyway, because there are some cultures where people are very staid, and for those people, you know, something that other people would consider maladaptive, say avoidance, um, you know, for those people, they're like, this is what people do. This is totally normal. And then in other cultures where they're more sort of community based and, that demonstrative in how they speak to each other, etc., and interact, for them, something that would be normal for maybe the rest of the world is considered, you know, very strange and avoidant because they're not, super extroverted, and they're not, you know, hanging on to everybody they walk down the street next to. They don't see somebody that they knew for 5 seconds 10 years ago and immediately give them a big hug. I would be freaked out if somebody did that to me. And I live in the U.S. I think that most people in the U.S., most, not all, would be freaked out. And I think that in other cultures, they would be beyond freaked out. They would think they've been assaulted by behavior that's considered normal in other cultures. So, I don't really know how to go on with this other than to say, what kind of makes a maladaptive coping technique compared to a regular coping technique? And again, it's the same thing as when I was doing the pushback against, I have a personality disorder, and my experience is the one labeled wrong and a disorder compared to, everybody else living their life, and why don't they get labeled a disorder? Maladaptive happens when it is affecting your life in a negative way instead of a positive way. Because, you could have a coping technique of, say, avoiding eye contact or something like that. That's a real simple coping technique. And most of the time, all you have to do, if you can't stand looking people in the eye because you're nervous, is like point something out and let's both look at this third thing instead of looking at each other. That works until you get to the point where you are truly incapable of looking somebody in the eye. And in situations where you really need to look somebody in the eye, like talking to your boss or something like that, and you are not able to do it. In order to speak to them, you can't look them in the eye. That is maladaptive, because then it starts to affect your life in a negative way. And that's what it comes down to. So, then what do you do about this? Okay, if you can go through all your coping techniques and say, pro-con list to try to figure out, is it truly maladaptive? How much is it keeping you from living compared to what you're getting back? It could be a matter of teeny tiny degrees. Like, this maladaptive coping technique is putting 30% harm in your life, but you're able to do this other thing that gives you 35% back. Okay. As long as you don't do the maladaptive coping technique without getting the stuff back, you are still making a positive impact, albeit a small one, on your life. Okay, maybe then you need to keep up that coping technique. If you're doing a coping technique that makes you feel bad about yourself, okay, well then, find something else. If you're doing something that is, that's I can go on for like a million examples of that, but that is the standard I think that people should use. The thing is, of course, it's part of the diagnosis to have avoidant personality disorder that you have maladaptive daydreaming. And where that line is you know, how does it become maladaptive? It becomes maladaptive when you're living more of your life daydreaming than you are living your life. And that's sort of like, I mean, if the only relationships you're able to have are in daydreams as opposed to having anybody else in your life at all, problem. And I mean, we're talking all the different types of, like friendships. If the only friendships you have are daydream friendships, maladaptive. If the only, and I'm not trying to put judgments on here. I'm trying to say this is how you can tell. If the only romantic relationships you're having are daydreams, and you're having no actual, in-person, real relationships, that is maladaptive. Especially if your daydreams are fulfilling enough that you have no need or desire to get these other relationships. Now, am I saying you have to have these relationships? No, I'm not. I'm saying if you need them so much that you're spending hours a day with your, daydream relationship, if it's causing depressions, etc., that's when it becomes maladaptive. I mean, it's adaptive in the beginning because you're like, I really am craving a person in my life right now. I can't have a person in my life, so I'm going to imagine what it would be like to have a person in my life. Okay. But then if you're if you're turning down opportunities to live because you're daydreaming, if you're losing work because you're staring off into space and you're not doing your job and you're getting fired or something like that, okay, maladaptive. If you're, not physically taking care of yourself, you're not sleeping, you're not eating because you're sitting there daydreaming, I'm not trying to be dismissive, I'm dead serious, that is maladaptive. And that's where the line is. So it does get to the point of being extreme. The reason why maladaptive daydreaming specifically is so negative for avoidant people is because, difference between avoidant personality disorder and schizoid personality disorder is avoidant people need and want people in relationships in their life. Schizoids generally don't. They can get by without them. Avoidant people need them. And so they are very much missing that part of their life. And so they are susceptible to maladaptive daydreaming, where all these things that they could have that would be fulfilling them, they are not able to fulfill them. So, and again, I mean, as a small coping technique, I'm not saying must stop. I'm saying if it's taking over your life and causing more damage than good, that's when it's become maladaptive. And the standard is way different for somebody with avoidant personality disorder than another person. Another person, if they're daydreaming for 5 minutes of the day, they think there's something wrong with themselves. An avoidant person, if they daydream for 5 minutes of the day, they think there's something wrong, like they must be in a coma. Like, that would cause such massive stress to not have those breaks that that would be really bad. So try to keep that in mind. I don't think I've really made any sense at all. But then I saw the comment once and couldn't find it again. So maybe I don't even know what I'm talking about. But there it is.